Hey, this is Taylor from Coun't, and in this video we are going to be talking all about custom visualizations. Now this is part of a series of videos on visuals, so if you haven't yet watched some of the earlier videos, in particular around templated visuals, then I recommend stopping here and going to check that out. Now, assuming everybody's caught up, then let's continue. So custom visuals, why would you use them over templates? So there will be times where templates don't give you exactly everything that you need. Maybe you want to do something really custom. Maybe you want to do something very specific to the type of data you're looking at. Whatever it is, there'll be times where you might want to just have more flexibility, more control for the visual that you want. And so the custom visual builder gives you pretty near complete control over your visual. So these are just some examples of visualizations that have been built using the custom visual builder. As you can see, they span from things that are probably pretty close to a template that we have to things like word clouds and network diagrams that we just don't have templates for, but are very powerful visualizations. And as we'll come to see, they're actually quite similar to a lot of the templates that we have. So there's a good starting point. Usually you don't have to start from scratch a lot of the time, which is nice. So cool, let's move on. The next thing we're going to talk about is how to build them. So basically you're going to start the same way that you would with a templated visual. So when you have a cell like this, you can just create a visual off of it. And now we know that this is connected. We've got a DAG mark here. And the difference is that in the right-hand side over here, instead of template, you can go to custom. Now, I kind of alluded to this a second ago, but you don't always have to start with custom if you know you're going to be there. For example, if I knew I was going to make that butterfly chart, I would probably start with a bar chart and then move into custom when I needed to. And I just find this a little bit faster and a little bit easier to think about when I know the template I'm going to start with, and then I kind of know that I'm going to be tweaking it and taking it further. But if you're building something quite unique or it doesn't really work with any of those templates, then you can always just start in custom here as well and go from there. Now, as you probably saw in that right-hand side, there's quite a few sections in this custom visual builder, and I'm going to go through them in this video so that you have a good understanding of how they work. And once you have a good idea of the framework behind the visualizations that we have, then it completely unlocks what you can do with it, and you can really kind of let your imagination run free. So it's really worth sticking around and hearing just how exactly this works, and then I imagine it all kind of come together at the end. So marks. Marks are probably the most kind of familiar way that we think about charts. They're actually what's being drawn on here. We can see in this graph we have a bar and a line chart, and we have two marks called bar and line. And we can look at these marks one at a time. So right now we're looking at the line chart, which is looking at average revenue over year. Now you'll notice the options that we have here are a lot more than we have in the template. So that's going to be something you'll notice a lot in the custom visual builder. Basically, we just give you all the options that are available, whereas in the template, we try to confine it to the ones that you're most likely to use. So if you do use a template and you're like, oh, I wish I could change X, then if you go into custom, there's probably a way for you to do that in there. So I recommend checking out some of the docs for all the details on these options, but most of them hopefully seem pretty familiar, nothing too surprising. But you can do things, here our line, we've adjusted our color of our line is now orange, and if we click our bar, then that's going to be blue. And we can do other things in here. We can change the size of these bars to be whatever we want. We can come back, all that kind of stuff. Now, there's in terms of the types of marks that we have, they're in here. So it's a lot of the bar and line charts and things like that, and area and text, which is a really powerful one. And so, yeah, I encourage you to think about what shapes and stuff you want to use. There'll be some that will be kind of surprising, like our heat map template, for example, is made using square mark types, which a lot of people don't really realize that's how that's made up. So when you want to put multiple marks in the same graph like we have here, basically the important thing to remember is that they act like layers. So we have a layer of a line chart, and we have a bar chart behind it in this case. So the line chart is just laying on top of the layer of the bar chart. Now we can switch that around by doing this, and now as you can see, the places where they overlap, the bar is forward in the kind of z-axis there. And we can always move it back, and now we can put that forward. So that's a really quick intro to marks. I'm also going to use this to cover filters really quick. So next to marks we have filters, and this is, you can obviously add filters in your SQL query. You can add filters using parameters. You can add filters using the table filter. There's a lot of ways that you can filter your data, but one of the other ways you can do it from the visual itself. And we cover this in some of the other videos, but I just wanted to cover it off here as well. Basically, you can treat them the same way that you would with templated visuals. You can come in here and add these relative filters and see how your data updates. Cool, so those are the first two, halfway done. And we're going to cover facet next. So facet is the next one down. You see facet here, look at this graph. And the main thing to remember about facet is it's basically a hierarchy. So you can see in this case we have all of the films here in 2018 that had a revenue over, whatever that is, 2 billion. And we're not going to have 2018 repeated over and over again. And this is because we have a hierarchied axis. If we flipped this, then you can see, we have films like The Lion King that are actually in 2 different years. So the order in facet really matters. It's really important. So the highest one is going to be your highest level of the hierarchy. And you could keep building that down. As you can see, if there was anything else, I could keep kind of dropping it down in here, and there would always be a next row for me to go to like that. Cool, so that is facet, which is basically hierarchy. And then we're going to talk about pivot. So pivot is probably best to show if I build it. So I'm going to kind of show you how I built this graph here using pivot. So yeah, we're going to start here. I'm probably going to start with a pivot table template. We're going to start with custom, actually, so you can see how to make it from custom. And I think the data we want is called a new data. And cool, so we're going to start with facet. So we know we've got these different things faceted here. So we have best picture as our columns, we have the director gender as our rows, and we can start to see kind of the bones of our pivot table taking shape. And now in pivot, we're going to start to add values. So this pivot section here, basically you're going to take several different columns, and in this case, maybe we want revenue and budget. Just drag them in here. And we can change the aggregations on here to be average. We have the same options that we do in the mark types, all that kind of stuff. But what's different is with pivot, we have these measure names and measure values. And these are always related just to your pivot section here. So in this case, I want the measure names. I want to know kind of which row I'm looking at here. So I'm going to bring measure names onto rows. And then when I want to display the values, I'm going to bring measure values onto text. And that's basically how I put pivot tables. Now, this is the text layer. You can imagine how you could turn this into a bar chart if you wanted to. I could make this, I could put this at bar, I can make that Y, and then I'll probably take that down there, like that, and now we can have these next to each other like this. And we can do more with this. We can add this to color if we want to, take that out, and then we can make that stacked, all that good stuff. So we can go ahead and start doing that. We can build it out. And yeah, that's that stack. The other kind of concept in here that you'll just notice I looked at in here is if you go into Mark, we have this idea of subplots. And so if we look at our butterfly chart over here, this is a really good example of using 2 different subplots. So we have 2 bar charts basically. And if we look at them in here, this one is on the second y-axis. This total streams, our orange one, is on the second y-axis, and we look at it here, it's on the first y-axis. So that's basically how subplots work. And so you can have 2 different axes next to each other, but they have to share one axis. So in this case, they share the artist axis on the y-axis there. So yeah, that is a very quick intro to the framework behind visualizations. It's a lot of detail here, but it's a very powerful framework, like I said, and once you start to get the hang of it, then really almost anything you can imagine is possible in these visuals. It's extremely powerful. And yeah, if you have any questions at all, please do let us know. If you want more inspiration of different charts you can make, to check out the Every Visual Under the Sun canvas. And yeah, I hope that was helpful. Talk to you all soon.